Hi, True Avatars, and welcome to your Queer Video Game Podcast. This is episode 25, and I am your host, Zoe Wild. I am a transgender and bisexual woman, and my pronouns are she, her. So I've got quite the episode lined up for you this week. First, we've got the news, as usual. This week we're pretty light on headlines that are like big, juicy, meaty headlines, except for one. It's pretty menacing too, is that Pokémon GO maker Niantic has been purchased by Scopely, the predatory mobile game maker known for Monopoly Go, Star Trek Fleet Command, and Marvel Strike Force. In the second half of the episode, I'll be joined by my partner Nicole to talk about what it's like to game with your partner in a queer relationship. The game will be focusing on the recently released co-op game Split Fiction, from the team that made the game of the year, It Takes Two. But first, joining me to tackle all the headlines is Amy-Lynn. Amy-Lynn is a transgender lesbian whose pronouns are she, her. Hi, Amy-Lynn. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. And also joining us is Lloyd Lloydster. Lloyd is a trans man who streams a wide variety of games on Twitch. Lloyd's pronouns are he, him. Hi, Lloyd. How have you been?
Hello. I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you both back. I think this is the first time you've both been on together, correct?
That's right.
Yes.
That's cool. I thought I'd just warm up the room, break the ice, by asking what you've both been playing lately.
So,
Amy, would you like to start?
as usual, still slightly playing Pokemon Go. I'm sure we'll get into that, as well as Pokemon Pocket or TCG Pocket. I also played a few great board games last weekend, and also a game that I don't remember what it was called, but it had this kind of moving portrait kind of vibe to it. It was like a mystery game. I wish I remembered what it was. I thought about it earlier, but I'm blanking again. But it was a bunch of murder mysteries. I'm sure that there's audience members who are screaming it at their phones or computers right now. But it was a sequel to a game that was apparently incredibly similar. And I just played the first chapter, or I participated in a group playing it, and it was a lot of fun.
Lloyd?
I've been playing Monster Hunter Wilds, and I am so bad at it. I know it's you play games to enjoy them, but I'm struggling, and I think it's because I'm forcing myself to do mouse and keyboard because I don't have a reliable cord for my my controller. So I think I'm just making this harder for myself, but I'm loving it. Revisiting a world that I've already played multiple titles of, and just seeing the little things that they do different. It's special. It's special.
Are you playing it on PC? It sounds like you are. Yeah. I'm playing it on PC. And it let's see. It's beautiful, but there's some weird optimization things that everyone, I feel has a very different experience with this game. When you first boot it up, it takes quite a long time to pick, an optimization packet to match your hardware, which is interesting and cool, but it seems to kind of randomize how it chooses to optimize depending on who's doing it. So some people's games look beautiful and it crashes. My game kind of looks like it's filmed with a potato, but it performs very beautifully. And I'm proud of my setup, but apparently Monster Hunter Wilds thought I needed to really nuke its quality, so I'm okay with that. It's only crashed once, so I'll take it. That's good. Yeah, actually, when I asked you about PC, my next question was going to be, how's the performance? So I heard on consoles it's much better. But I'm glad at least you're aside from visuals, obviously, that it runs pretty well and you've only crashed once.
Yeah, and it was accepting a friend request in game, so I'm not sure what that's about, but otherwise all good.
Actually, so Amy-Lynn, you also mentioned I want to go back to this. I clearly it's been a long week for me, but I spaced on this. When you said you were playing TCG Pocket, I wanted to know if you'd heard that they fixed trading in that game.
I did hear that they were in the process of fixing it. I don't know if it has launched yet. I think I read something about the fall, but I did read about the update that they're fixing trading, which is great because I have no real incentive to trade at this point.
Yeah, I think they took away the like trading token thing or whatever it is, and now it's just like, and now you don't have to grind your cards to trade. You can just like use shine dust, which was what originally was theorized to be the reason to, like the currency to trade with. So
it makes a lot more sense, and I also really like that. As like in a huge contrast to Niantic and Pokemon Go in general, like it's amazing to have the Pokemon TCG Pocket team basically address every criticism, like even the ones that they can't actually do much about. Like, you know, a lot of people have said like, oh, if you go, you know, first, you have a huge disadvantage. And like, I think I read somewhere they're like, yeah, we know about that, but there's not much we can do. Or I'm not sure if that was just analysts saying that, but for almost every other criticism, they've at least addressed it, or they've been doing, you know, things to correct it. It's been really encouraging to see.
Oh, wow.
yeah, sorry, go ahead, Lloyd.
No, it's just, that's pretty cool. I played that game multiple hours a day for like the first month it came out, and then I forgot it existed. So to hear about trading and then all of the stuff that's happened, that's awesome.
I mean, fundamentally, the game is still the same. It's still pretty good in my opinion, and less predatory than Pokemon Go. And we're going to talk about this later. I don't think Pokemon Go is particularly a predatory game compared to most mobile games, but like in the gradient that is non-predatory to predatory, TCG Pocket falls very far away from predatory.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive on that on that level. Like, I'm sure we'll talk about this kind of thing later on in the episode, but like I've never really felt a huge like desire to pay money into it, or like the need. Like, it is very kind of low pressure.
Yeah, I like. I mean, I signed up for the free trial, the 2 weeks or whatever, when you to get the paid subscription thing they do, where you get the promo and then you get the extra pack per day. But then I remembered I was going to actually pay for it because it didn't feel that like I didn't feel disgusted with the idea of paying for it. But then I thought about it and I was like, wait a minute, these are digital cards. I don't get to keep these.
Yeah.
And then that stopped me, thankfully. So.
And just for the very frustrated listeners, the game I was playing, it was called The Rise of the Golden Idol. It has a very good rating on, I think it's Google Play, but yeah, it was a lot of fun, weird art style, but I just wanted to alleviate those who were trying to think of it, and I didn't want to have them rely on show notes or anything annoying like that. You get all the information right here in the podcast itself.
Wait, can you remind me of the title again?
The Rise of the Golden Idol. And it seems like it is probably a sequel to a game called The Case of the Golden Idol.
I am writing that down because guess what? It's going in the show notes.
Yeah, but they don't need to find it there.
100%. No, I totally get what you're saying. Let's jump into the news because we do have a bunch of tiny headlines. So the first one is Nintendo Life the translation comes from Nintendo Life, I think, but the actual source is not really Nintendo Life. They didn't link the source, actually. They were just like, yeah, Square Enix said this somewhere and we translated it. Anyway, they said that Chrono Trigger is going to celebrate the 30th anniversary, its 30th anniversary with various projects. So the quote from Nintendo Life, the translation they did: "Today marks the 30th anniversary of the release of Chrono Trigger in 1995. As we mark the 30th anniversary, we will be launching various projects that go beyond the world of the game over." Oh, wow, I did not read that correctly. "Beyond the world of the game over the next year to express," I'm so game-pilled that I just said game over instead of game over the next year, "to express our gratitude to everyone who has played Chrono Trigger so far. The latest information will be posted on Square Enix official X and I guess they meant Twitter, and at Chrono Trigger PR. So please look forward to it." We don't call it X in this house. So Chrono Trigger is probably the most famous and well-loved SNES game that isn't available anywhere right now, except for especially modern consoles. If you're a PC or mobile gamer, you can get a buggy-ish version of the game to play. And it's relatively cheap too most of the time. I think at full price, it's only like 20 Canadian dollars. So it's probably $15 US, I have to imagine. But there's no HD 2D remake, there's no pixel remaster, there's no large scale 3D Final Fantasy VII remake style remake. It's not even the original version doesn't even have all the enhancements from the DS version, which is what the PC version has. Like, they haven't even put the SNES version on Nintendo Switch Online. So you do have to wonder if Square Enix is working on something.
I don't think that Chrono Trigger is nearly as cursed as the Mother franchise, but it wouldn't surprise me if the number of projects are kind of similar to Earthbound. It's like, here's a day planner, here's some plushies, okay, bye.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, and I have never played Chrono Trigger, and so whenever these like new projects come up that are either anniversary ones or folks getting really excited about something that they have a lot of nostalgia for, I'm like, oh, neat. Maybe I'll do it this time around. Like, not that I actively chose not to engage in it before, but it just never happened. So it's very cool to think about.
Yeah, I've had a very similar history with Chrono Trigger. Like, it's been sort of in like both the zeitgeist and like the sort of local friend zeitgeist. Like, I've had a lot of friends who have loved it. It's looked really fun. Like, the characters and world seem really appealing. But I think that just being a lengthy RPG, it kind of always got shoved behind maybe a more modern game that was coming out, like a Persona or something like that. But I would love, another reason to maybe not ignore it this time, like one of the pixel remaster style things, like HD 2D. Any of those would be great. I just really feel bad for anyone who is really hoping for a sequel, because I'm not sure that's happening.
Well, you did mention Mother, and Mother has 3 games, and the Chrono series only has 2 games. And it's funny, too, because they actually remastered Chrono Cross, I think it's called, a few years ago, and released it on every platform you can imagine. That's, anyway, recent consoles anyway. But Chrono Trigger has had nothing, and it's the more popular game by like a landslide. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I'm really curious why that is. Like, if Chrono Cross was easier to sort of remake or polish. But yeah, aside from, as you mentioned, the DS release, and then earlier than that, the PlayStation release, which, included those fun cutscenes, the original game hasn't really got much. Like, did it even have stickers in Smash Brothers? Like,
I don't know, actually.
Kind of forgotten.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Now that you mention it, actually, I'm going to confidently say I don't think so, but I invite anyone to yell at us in the comments, like, lovingly, but yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't help that Square Enix has a weird relationship with Nintendo and a weird relationship with their own licensing things. So the fact that there's nothing in Smash Bros. Could mean absolutely nothing in terms of whether or not they care about Chrono Trigger. Because I think when they first licensed Cloud out to Smash Bros., like, he came with 2 music tracks and like nothing else besides like the character, the stage, and like they did the absolute bare minimum to get people to pay for Cloud and Smash. So
Square Enix is so funny, because I remember as a kid, like, when Kingdom Hearts first came out, and I was so confused. Like, I was elated that all of these things were like overlapping, and like like seeing all of these different IPs together, and my child brain like was like, why is Final Fantasy here? What's happening? Like, I just didn't like. That's really neat.
It is funny that in Kingdom Hearts, they, build it as, Square Enix and Disney for the longest time, but it took like 5 games until a non-Final Fantasy game got really represented in The World Ends With You, which was, the creator's other kind of franchise. So like, it's a little bit sad that they never did expand to like Chrono Trigger or, one of the other Square Enix games.
Let's jump ahead to the next headline. So we've got Power Wash Simulator 2 has been announced. The sequel to the popular cozy game about cleaning things up is coming to PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. No Nintendo consoles have been confirmed. To be honest, I'm not sure if Power Wash Simulator is really a queer game, but I just figure like it's such a popular cozy game that I know a lot of people play. That I'm sure there's a lot of queer people that just like to sit down and like watch things in a video game. So I thought I would include that little bit of news here for anyone who might, I don't know. I know there's people who like listen to podcasts to get their news, and people who, don't doom scroll like I do for, every little crumb of video game news ever. So I just thought I'd include it here because it feels like relevant to video games as a whole, the same way I include stuff about layoffs and everything else.
I feel it. I see it. And like anything that could potentially invite some peace in your life. I feel like, especially now, the queer folks need like any sense of peace, and I feel like Power Wash Simulator 2 can be like a meditative, grounding experience.
Yeah, maybe they'll let you power wash the White House in this new one, and you can figure out the problems.
Yes,
it's the worst joke I've ever made.
Well, in that same gameplay session as the Golden Idol games, I did hear about a game called Viscera, which is apparently one of the inspirations to Power Wash Simulator, which deals with space station accidents gone wrong and having to clean up like body parts and things. So,
oh my gosh,
there are apparently it is a whole genre of games. So maybe cleaning up governments is a possibility in the future. We've had space stations, everything that Power Wash Simulator covers. It'd be interesting to have different locations or theming.
Well, speaking of, I was going to make a body part joke about White House, but I'm not going to do that. I'm evolved. I'm too evolved for that. On happier, not happier. This is Power Wash Simulator 2 coming out is definitely happy news, but also happy news and less dark than me making body part jokes is that the Steam Spring Sale is on now, and I hope anyone who's listening to this is doing so on the day it comes out because it's only a week-long sale. It runs until March 20th, which I think is next Thursday. So we're recording on Friday, March 14th. This podcast releases on Monday, March 17th. Yes, I can do dates, right? Yes. And anyway, so that means I've on the day the podcast releases, there'll be 3 more days of the Steam Spring Sale. And Steam used to have 2 big sales per year and then like lots of little sales throughout the year. But it seems to me now that there's like a big winter sale level sale every quarter. So there's like an autumn/Black Friday sale. And now they've also added the spring sale. So like I went to check my wish list and pretty much every game was on sale. And a lot of queer games had deep discounts. True avatars, put your knees to chest, go running to that your Steam wish list and go support all those queer games I've been talking about on the podcast, please and thank you. Ooh. And check your local time zone for when the sale actually ends, because I think it's 1 p.m. Eastern time where we are, but obviously that differs depending on where you are in the world. I saw that we have a lot of listeners from Ireland lately, so the Irish are going to have to check their time zone for when the sale ends. Have you guys bought anything?
Oh my goodness, I try to avert my eyes when sales happen, but you made such a good call to action to go support the indie devs, because as little as throwing something on a wish list, it does huge for numbers and everything. So now is such a good time to do it, and especially if their games are involved in sales. Indie games are generally reasonably priced to begin with, in my experience. So if there's a sale going on, now would be the perfect time to do it.
Yeah, and Rocket Adrift, the devs we had on for an interview, I think about a month ago now, their games Raptor Boyfriend and Psychroma are on sale right now too. I didn't check to see how much because I already own them, but I did retweet them on Blue Sky, or Reskeet, I guess is what it is on Blue Sky. In darker news, in terms of video game content, Silent Hill F has been officially revealed with a new trailer. I don't have much to say about this, but Konami has commissioned a brand new Silent Hill game that is not a remake, it's brand new. And it actually looks really good. I don't know how much of the trailer itself had gameplay versus like pre-rendered cinematics, but it was very pretty to look at, very creepy. I recommend going to check out the trailer. I'm going to link it in the show notes. They have announced pre-orders, so there is this kind of scary note about the pre-orders. It's not the game itself isn't just scary, but the prices too. Here in Canada, the game is $100 for the base version of the game, and games PS5 games and Xbox Series S games are $90 right now before tax, and Switch games are $80 here. So you've got your $60, your $70, and I assume in the US it's probably an $80 pre-order. So not a I know we talked about GTA 6 possibly pushing games up to $100, but it seems to me like, yeah, maybe the industry is moving in that direction and tariffs haven't even been enforced yet. So, yeah.
I'm not going to be able to play games soon.
Yeah.
Well, it'll just push everyone to indie games more.
That's I was going to say, speaking of cheap indie games, and cheap in the sense that they're much lower priced than AAA games, go play lots of indie games, especially if you want to fill out your backlog. And also, a lot of indie games are shorter, too, so if you want something bite-sized, go support indie games. Although the Silent Hill F game, despite the price, looks really, really good. It's set in Japan this time versus somewhere in the US, so I think it's got that right mix of like Silent Hill creepiness that the series is known for, but also that like 80s, 90s, early 2000s style of like Japanese horror film vibe, and it's set in the 60s too. I don't think it's even set in modern day, so it's also kind of a period piece, weirdly enough. Anyway, I'm done gushing about that. Should we move on to the big headline of the episode?
Let's do it.
Okay, so this comes from Deadline, although there are many, many sources talking about this and have been for weeks, but it's been confirmed. Mobile game giant Scopely has purchased Niantic, the maker of Monster Hunter Now, Pikmin Bloom, and Pokémon GO. So it is now confirmed that Scopely is indeed buying Niantic, and for anyone who doesn't know, Scopely is a huge, huge mobile game company that's known for games like Monopoly Go, Marvel Strike Force, Star Trek Fleet Command, and many others. So this is a really, really loaded story, and we're going to break it down piece by piece. And we're also not going to talk about one of the elephants in the room, because it's already such a loaded story. And I don't think we have the time in the podcast to really do it justice. So I'll just break down what's here in the article. Mobile gaming firm Scopely is paying $3.5 billion to acquire the video game business of Niantic, including marquee asset Pokémon GO. The deal also brings titles like Pikmin Bloom and Monster Hunter Now into Scopely's portfolio, among other apps and live experiences. Niantic's teams will continue to be managed by their longtime game studio leaders Kei Kawai and Ed Wu. Scopely is known for mobile games like Monopoly Go, Stumble Guys, Star Trek TM Fleet Command, and Marvel Strike Force. So, I mean, it makes sense why Scopely would be interested in purchasing Niantic, because Pokemon Go is a cash cow. It makes a lot of money, so it's probably doing most of the heavy lifting for that $3.5 billion price tag. And Pokemon Go right now is actually still a free-to-play game. And I mean, to be fair, most of the games that Scopely makes are also free-to-play, but the monetization in Pokemon Go has become significantly more aggressive as the player base has downsized, because when it launched in 2016, the amount of people playing it was like huge. And then as time went on, the player base dwindled, not to the point where like no one is playing it, but it became diehard players and not much else. So as that player base has dwindled and shrunk a bit, they've had to kind of hone in on like how they're going to make their money and get money from their players, right? So but I've basically played the game without spending a dime. I mean, to be completely transparent, I've spent about $30 total over the years. But none of that was ever because like, oh, I can't get the experience I want out of this game. It was more so like, oh, they're offering an exclusive Pokemon that hasn't been given out. And that sounds really bad, but that's a Pokemon issue, not a Pokemon Go issue. So anyway, I'm going to get into that, but sticking to my show notes here, and Lloyd, Amy, if you want to jump in at any point, feel free. But yeah, so a few years ago, I spent $10 to increase my storage and buy some raid passes when they first debuted raid passes, just because I wanted more of them. I wanted to hoard them. You got like one a day, and I was like, oh, maybe occasionally I might want to do 2 or 3 raids per day. I ended up I think I still have almost all those raid passes. I've never used any of them. Maybe I used 1 or 2. And anyway, raids, for anyone who doesn't know, also they're essentially the raid passes are essentially tickets that let you join a larger group to battle and catch rare and powerful Pokemon, like Mewtwo, for example. Like if you wanted to battle Mewtwo, they would have raids around the city, and you'd go to a gym, quote unquote, like you'd go to a Pokestop, and then you would join the raid with like 20 other people, and you would battle Mewtwo. You use the raid pass to get into the raid. But if you want to do a second raid with Mewtwo, like let's say you didn't catch Mewtwo the first time, because of course winning the raid doesn't guarantee you're going to catch Mewtwo, which I think is silly, but you could buy a second raid pass to go and catch Mewtwo again. And then there's people who catch Mewtwo, and then they want to catch a second Mewtwo and a third Mewtwo until they have a whole army of Mewtwo's.
Now, Zoe, you know the Pokemon rule, the plural is Mewtwo.
That is true, yeah. Actually, Pokemon Go added an update this week where you could have it alert you by notification for a specific, like if you wanted a specific to tell you when a specific Pokemon was nearby. So I picked Magnemite, and it actually did put it into a sentence, and it was like, we will alert you when there are nearby Magnemite, and there was no S at the end. So yeah, it's just nice to see consistency like that, I guess, even though I prefer to use the plural with the S. But anyway, so over the years since 2016, though, they've added a lot of options to buy items in the store. On many weekends, they have paid events where you can access what are essentially side quests. Like they'll ask for, like, I feel like, Amy-Lynn, what is it, like $1 or $2 for like the weekend things they do?
Yeah, I think in Canadian it's 2 or 3, but yeah, about that.
That's fair. Okay, yeah, I listen to an American show where they talk about the prices because I don't play a lot of Pokemon Go. Like I'll open it up maybe if I'm like walking down the street. Occasionally I'll, like, if I'm riding the bus and the bus is moving slow, like I'll open the game up and like do my daily stuff occasionally. If there's a community day event, I'll like open it up for like 20 minutes, walk around the block and catch a couple shiny Pokemon and then close it and never think about it. But they also, in recent years, they've also started having these lots of large events throughout the year. And some of them are in cities and some of them are global. Like you can play them for anywhere in the world. And they're usually called Go Fest, but sometimes they have different names. And these events usually cost around $20 or so. And maybe for Canadians, it was $25. But they let you access all kinds of Pokemon events, special items, stuff like that. Just like little bonuses that you don't need to be able to experience the event fully, but I paid the $25 or whatever it was, or the $20. They did Diancie a couple of years ago, and Amy-Lynn, you and I went and played that together, and we caught a Diancie each. But they hadn't given out Diancie in the games, in the main series games, for like years, and I wanted it was the one mythical I was missing, so I went and got it and paid for it because I didn't know when. And honestly, they still haven't given it out anywhere else, so I'm kind of glad I did, but. That's kind of the only time I've like succumbed to something scummy, but also I feel like that's the Pokemon company's fault, not Niantic's. So,
yeah, and I was part of like that initial wave in 2016, and I think I played it for like 2 years straight. Kind of fell off because I didn't live super close to gyms, and for free to play, that was like the only way to get gold. To then increase my storage, which was like the first hurdle that I ran into, because I wanted to keep all 17 copies of Pikachu with the different hats and the so I kind of fell off right around there, and then I came back during lockdown, during COVID, when they increased the distances for certain things. Like they implemented so many quality of life things that made the game better, and people got used to that. Which they then took away, and then everyone stopped playing again. Because yeah, when you were talking about those events where you're like paying $20-$25, I'm like, what? Like, I am a very stingy gamer, and if there's a way to do free to play, at most I'll usually get maybe a battle pass for a game, if I know I'm gonna be playing it for the entire time and to get the whole pass. But yeah, as the years have gone, Pokemon Go has just like added more and more and more little things to get a little bit more money out of you.
Yeah. That said, though, it's still relatively, like, it's scummy, I won't lie, and it's like sleazy what they've done to like incentivize you to pay for like incubators to hatch eggs and raid passes and remote raid passes, and then they limit how much you can do with those items, and yeah, they make it harder. Obviously, if you live in a city, it's much easier to do things than it is if you're rural. And yeah, like I have like a laundry list of problems with Niantic and the way they run Pokemon Go and the like all the issues I have, but I would still argue it's still not predatory in the same sense that a lot of mobile games are. And we're going to get into what makes Scopely's games predatory. But like in Pokemon Go, there's like not really much advertising. Like you don't have to like watch an ad every time you catch a Pokemon. Or like, oh, you clicked on a Pokemon to go battle it or catch it. Like you don't have to watch an ad before the Pokemon loads on your screen. The only ads in the game are occasionally there's a branded Pokestop. Like if you walk by a McDonald's and you open the game, you can see that McDonald's has a branded Pokestop, and you don't have to do anything to spin that Pokestop. You just see the McDonald's M in the Pokestop's icon as you spin it. And then the other time I've seen ads is like occasionally like Team Rocket's balloon will float above you. And when you click on it, it's not actually Team Rocket's balloon. It's like an advertisement, and it'll say like, oh, Starbucks wants to give you these free items. Do you accept? And then that's all it does, really. Like, it doesn't make you watch an ad. It doesn't they're completely optional to interact with. And when you interact with them, it's the same way you'd interact with everything else in the game. And then you just forget about it. So I think that's, as far as like mobile games go that are free to play, that's really kind of humble, I guess. And I'm not defending Niantic, but like, for all the things they could have done to monetize this game, they haven't, to make it really predatory. It's still very kid friendly. It still is within the scope of like the Pokemon brand and Nintendo's brand. So
yeah, as you said, like there's, I think that the price and accessibility of incubators is frustrating. And that's just not because of my own failed shiny hunts. But aside from that, it is like remarkably unpredatory. Like there's no like locking out after a certain time. Like it's not like, oh, sorry, you played too much. You can't, throw a Pokeball for 20 minutes unless you give us $1. Like there's none of that. There's still limited resources, but if you like are able to walk around, if you do live in a, suburban or urban environment, and or you're lucky and, you happen to have like the one gas station in town that has a Pokestop, or a gym, then you can still get by. But like, yeah, for the most part, like, I guess it almost does feel like they go out of their way to not be predatory, because there are so many more ways they could be. And as you said, like they've gotten worse over the years for sure in various ways, but it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, and even for the rural issue, they haven't fixed it entirely. It is a much worse game if you live rural, because there's fewer Pokestops, there's fewer gyms. However, they have added things like, because there's fewer Pokestops, it's harder to get items. So they have made it so like there's like a free daily like gift in the shop where you get a bunch of Pokeballs. They've made it, I think they've, like for rural players, they even gave out at one point free items, I think at some point, if I'm not misremembering. So like just the rural thing is its own issue, but it's not because Niantic is a scummy company. It's because the game is designed inherently for people who live in the city, which is funny because Pokemon's a game where you leave the city to explore nature, and they make it impossible to explore nature in Pokemon Go. But anyway, let's start talking about Scopely's monetization tactics. So I couldn't find a ton of sources on this because I hear a lot of people talking about it in podcasts, on YouTube, on Reddit, on social media, but I can't find a lot of like legitimate news sources talking about Scopely's monetization tactics and how predatory they are and how the kind of company they are. I did see a few comments in places saying that maybe Scopely is suppressing the narrative and controlling it and manipulating it, but I'm not going to say that's true because I can't verify it. And so ethically speaking, I'm not going to say like they're definitely doing that, but it is suspicious. I almost said sus, but I feel that word has played out, but it's a bit sus that like there isn't too many news stories. Like even in the stories taught from Deadline and Kotaku that I've linked in the show notes, they don't really talk about Scopely's monetization tactics. There's no commentary on it. And I'm sure reading between the lines, there's other reasons why you don't want to piss off a company from a country where they're now owned by, to put it mildly. But I found some Reddit posts talking about these monetization tactics just to give people a sense of like what Monopoly Go is like, because I will not download the game. I don't really enjoy mobile gaming in the first place because of the predatory monetization of it. Also, it's bad. I'm on my phone enough. I don't need more reasons to be staring at my phone all day. But this comes from a user named FizzChilla at work. And they say, honestly, I know what I'm getting into when I downloaded a freemium game like this, but never have I had close to as many pop-ups as this game gives you. I just logged in and had to cross off 6 panels before even getting to the home screen / board section of the app. The sales are horrendous as well. The prices in these quote-unquote sales are ridiculous for what you get. I dread to think about how much Scopely / Hasbro / whoever profit from this behavior. I don't even care that these prices are high and the profits, etc., but at least give me a chance to log in and breathe before you ply me with stupid offers. And that the ableism in there is not, I did not add that. They take up a stupid amount of screen space as well. Absolute madness. And then another user, Darthlink77, says, "This game is complete crap. I'm done with it, and I'm honestly hoping to start a boycott against Scopely in general. They do this crap on all of their games, but this one is absolutely the worst. There is no way to be a free-to-play player and make it anywhere at all. It's impossible. I tried to suck it up and just deal with it because I truly did enjoy the game at first, but they do nothing for you once you are deep into the game. They encourage you to spend money literally all the time, and with spam ads to buy dice every single time you run out. They know exactly what they are doing, and they have rigged the game further with this new season just to stick it to us even more." So have either of you played Monopoly Go before?
At first, I was very confidently saying no, but as you were reading those Reddit posts, I could see the UI when they were talking about like how they had to go through 6 different screens to open the game. I was like, okay, that's most mobile games, that's how they monetize, yeah. But then when you got to buying dice, I was like, wait a second. There was
like this... Vietnam flashbacks.
Oh my gosh. Just like the 1,000-yard stare. Yeah. There was this mobile app. I don't even know what it was, but it was if you downloaded games through it, you could get gift cards, and it sounds as dumb as that's not the right word. It sounds as
silly,
bad, yeah, as it does. You had to play the games for a really long time, and I was just goofy. I got a couple gift cards from it, but at the end of the day, I was like, this is not how I want to spend my time. This is not how I want to use my personal devices with games that I wouldn't even play if I wasn't being encouraged to play them. Like a Pavlovian response with flashing a gift card at me. But yeah, no, if it's one of the games I played, it was you could feel yourself being the product. You could feel yourself like there wasn't much game to it. It was you pressed a bunch of buttons, you pressed them in a certain order to be able to maybe make progress. It didn't really feel like you were playing anything. It just kind of felt like a bunch of ways to accidentally spend money if you clicked on the wrong thing and you had auto payment set up.
Oof.
Yeah, it was very. There's a quote, and I wish I could remember who says anything, but I can't. But the quote was something along the lines of, "If you don't have to pay for it, you're the product," or something like that.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe someone knows it better than I do, but I definitely playing those type of games. I get that feeling very quickly.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, Pokemon Go, I feel like to some extent you are the product. I've seen people talk about the fact that like there's so much location data that's been earned, not earned, but like gathered through Pokemon Go, just existing and people playing it. And when Niantic started out too, when they started out with Ingress, like it was just like they just wanted to help map the world, and now it just feels like wherever you walk, like they know where you're walking past when you're playing Pokemon Go. They probably know where you're walking past when you don't even have the app open, because there's so many settings now to like have the game do passive things for you, like Adventure Sync. So, but Pokemon Go aside, like Monopoly Go is clearly much more scummy. Like just having to open an ad, like click through an ad. Like I think this person said there was like six panels they had to cross out before they could even like get to the loading screen. And when you load Pokemon Go, like it takes a second, but like once you're in, like the Pokemon pop up, the Pokestops pop up. You can go anywhere you want in the game, in the menus, or you can click any Pokemon you want. Like it doesn't, there's a couple pop-ups in terms of like, oh, hey, while you were gone, your Pokemon came back to you from the gym, or, you walked 5 kilometers. So here's your free 25 Pokeballs or whatever.
Yeah, none of the pop-ups in Pokemon Go are like really obtrusive. Like it's never, like I've never had like a pop-up going like, oh, you ran out of things. Do you want to buy more? Like maybe I've had that like, you know what? I have had that happen once, and it was during their recent event with like the big, strong, scary Pokemon things that they were releasing, and like halfway through a battle with one, it asked if I wanted to buy like one of the passes so I could access more of the Safari Balls. But that's the only time, and it's just this past year, right? Like it was really recent. And once I said no, it didn't try again. Like it tried the one attempt at like, oh, hey, Amy, do you want you want to spend some money? Nope. Oh, okay. We'll try again in 6 months. Like it felt like kind of reasonable because I was struggling with this Pokemon, because of a weird glitch that happened. Basically, I encountered one of these Pokemon which are programmed to run like instantly. Like they're programmed to, after you try once, there's an incredible high likelihood it's going to run because it's like a mysterious amount of combat points. But the problem is that I encountered one of these giant, super strong Pokemon, an Electivire, that the Electivire was also shiny. So shiny Pokemon don't run. So we had this Pokemon that was basically programmed to run and only be catchable really by these Safari Balls. And because I didn't want to run, and it kind of was stuck there, I basically was there for like 25 minutes just throwing balls at the same thing. It was a weird situation. So yeah. But I ran an experiment, as you were talking. I made the daring choice to open the X app, and I scrolled down, and it only took 10 posts for there to be a Monopoly Go ad. I have had like Monopoly Go ads like being the most common ads on my phone for like at least the last few months, if not like the last year or so. And gosh, does it seem like an unappealing game. Like I get why, like, there's a lot of bright, shiny things that are popping up, but like even this ad is like, I'm only reading it here because I'm not trying to be a shill for it, obviously. But the ending of this ad copy is remarkable. So it reads, hit go. Roll the dice. Earn Monopoly money. Monopoly is all caps. Interact with your friends, family members, and fellow tycoons. And tycoons is capitalized for some reason. From around the world as you explore the expanding universe of Monopoly Go. And it stops. It says
What?
it's and then ellipses. And then nothing else. It isn't a multi-part tweet. It isn't. There isn't an answer to that. It's in the video ad. It just suddenly stops, as if there is supposed to be more ad, but they just gave up before. And like clearly they're paying, so they can make this thing as long as they want. But yeah, it was bizarre. So I don't know, like, I have a negative impression of Monopoly in general, not to mention Hasbro or this new overlord company of Pokemon Go. Like, one of the worst board game experiences of my life was the game called Monopoly Deal. So the idea of, like, a snazzy, faster version of a game that, like, is miserable to play in its normal form. And the fact that they can't make a fast version of it like non-miserable doesn't give me high hopes for a predatory mobile version. So
yeah. Okay, so I also want to hear about because Lloyd, you said you've played Star Trek TM Fleet Command. I think that's the proper name for it, or no, maybe not played it, but you said there was something to do with your streaming with it.
Yes. Okay. So, and I'm just gonna like maybe over-explain, maybe under-explain, I don't know, because I know some folks are streamers and some folks aren't. Like, there's gonna be some folks have never heard of Twitch or YouTube, so we don't, you never know. So as a streamer, there's a couple of different popular maybe services isn't the right word, but like Stream Elements or Streamlabs. They're different types of. Gosh, the English language is really escaping me on this Friday. But basically, they're like different tools, and they help with different things. Like, you can use them to make overlays. You can use them to make, sound alerts. So they kind of try to package a lot of stuff in to be, just try to give small streamers or any streamers that are trying to grow everything that they think they might need. And so one of the things that have popped up a little bit over the last several years as streaming's gotten more popular as everyone's like flocking, it feels like anyways, to become the next big streamer is sponsorships. And for someone who, I might be projecting a little bit, but as someone who, especially early on, you put hundreds of hours into this, where you stream multiple times, either a week, multiple times a month, you put hundreds of hours into this, and you might get some money from subscriptions based on what platform you're on, but you're doing it because you love it. And these sponsorships, coming back to the topic, I promise, these sponsorships are, they can be anything. When I first started, maybe like 5-ish years ago, when I really was looking into this, they had some pretty decent offers. Decent in the way that going from basically being paid less than minimum wage for the amount of work you put into it, significantly, to, oh, hey, I can make money if I hit these metrics they give me. And so now, fast forward to today, meal prep companies, I'm trying not to name drop, I guess. I don't know why. I guess it's fine. But different meal prep companies, different subscription services, not really like streaming, but like boxes. Oh god, like loot boxes, my right. So there's a lot of different things. And so one of the ones that is a really big market is mobile gaming. And the big thing, and so coming to Star Trek Fleet Command, when we started talking about the topic for this week, I was like, that sounds really familiar. So I looked it up to make sure, and lo and behold, available on my dashboard is a Star Trek Fleet Command campaign, which is bright and shiny. For a small streamer, it could be really exciting. And honestly, if anyone does do these and, their community loves it, they love it, no sweat to you. Like, I love that. Get your money. But to kind of like put into perspective how you get money for folks who might not be familiar, usually, and it's for this, I'll focus on this one. The focus is on getting new players, new installs for new accounts using your specific link that they make for you. And so that includes, the device can never have installed the game before sometimes, and it has to be a brand new account, so their email address can't ever have been used for an account before. And you have to use their branded visuals on your stream for X amount of hours, for X amount of time. You have to say these certain things. And at the end of the day, it's several hours of work. Like, if several hours of work go into this. And just I've got the list in front of me. So for every install of the game for a brand new player using your link, that's $1. That's $1.
Seems low.
Yeah, that's one entire shiny dollar, USD. Keep in mind, they do say in small print that this could be different depending on the person, but anyone I talk to, and anecdotally, we're not getting different offers. So yeah, $1 for fresh installs of the game after you've rallied your community. That's there because they want to watch.
So
you.
$1 per person for each install?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which can be something, right? But for like all of the effort going into it, $1 per install. For everyone getting to level 2, that's potentially another $1. And then the big one is unlocking a second ship, and that they estimate that takes an hour and a half. But for other things I've seen that use this system, they lowball it as much as possible. So for an hour and a half's worth of dedicated, like, you're trying to get your community to play this game for an hour and a half, that's $4. And
sorry, so that's not you streaming it and you unlocking the second ship yourself. That's you convincing your players to unlock it, and they have to spend the 90 minutes in their version of in their new account getting the ship, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's mind-boggling to me because I guess there's a lot of obvious reasons why it's mind-boggling, because that is, for some growing communities, you know, you might have a handful of dedicated folks who might be on board with this. And so to get them like, please do this, like there's only so many call to actions you can make, at least personally, before it feels like disingenuous, I feel like I would have to really like a product to then like really, really, really push that much dedication into it. And I haven't played this game, but if it's anything like we were just talking about with Monopoly Go, like no, keep playing, no, keep playing. That's horrible. That's horrible.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of it in Pokemon Go terms as well. Like if Pokemon Go was like every 5 Pokemon you caught, an ad popped up. So then you're trying to tell your audience as a streamer, and you're to get your money, you're trying to tell them like, hey, you need to go catch 150 Pokemon, not all 150 different Pokemon, but like go into your game and catch the next first 150 Pokemon that you find. And let's say that they estimate that takes like an hour or whatever. Mm-hmm. So then after, like, you're trying to get them to like basically watch an hour of advertising.
Oh my gosh.
Assuming like, so basically the theory I've got now, and that a lot of people are worried about, not a theory so much, is like a genuine concern, is that Pokemon Go is going to become predatory by being owned by Scopely. Just to kind of tie this conversation together.
Like, even the fact that they can track all that information is kind of like, I get it that that's kind of how things work, but it still kind of seems like weird that they can like know when all of the, players that signed up with a certain link have like gotten a second ship. Like, I don't know. It's a lot of information.
I'm not going to jump into it too much because it's not about this game specifically, but I've done mobile campaigns before, and the last one I did, I decided it was my last one because not only was I having to hit all of these metrics and like encourage folks to play the game, but they weren't counting. I was having folks in my community telling me, "Oh, I got to this. Did it count for you?" No, it's not showing up on my dashboard. So I then had to get people to send me screenshots. I didn't have to. They did it because they're like, "Oh, I played this game. I want to make sure it counts for you," which absolutely loved that. I was very thankful. But then I had to then do extra work on top of it to like email support, send the screenshots, and it was goofiness. It was goofiness.
I mean, that's what it is, right? Lloyd, you said it earlier, like, we are the product, right? So like, they want you to play for 90 minutes because they now you've convinced your audience to watch 90 minutes of advertising. And then after they've played 90 minutes of it, they've probably been like hooked by predatory, like, what's it called? Like, it's like gambling, right? Where you get kind of addicted to it. Mm-hmm. And so once you're like, people are already addicted to their phones, but once you're like into the game, it's got it's hooks in you. And then, then you've got a player that's watching ads. So like the amount of money they're making off the player is like nothing compared to like what the $4 they're going to give you for people reaching 90 minutes of gameplay.
They're just making, especially when there's ads involved. Yeah, they're just making a lot of money, a lot more than they're paying out.
Yeah, so the concern boils down to now is like, is Pokemon Go, Pikmin Bloom, Monster Hunter now, are these games going to be reworked to be full of advertising? Are they going to have these because like, I know I listened to PKMN Cast, which is called It's Super Effective. It's a Pokemon podcast. And every week they talk about Pokemon Go and all the stuff going on. It's the only reason I know what's happening in that game is because like, I when I read on Cerebi.net Pokemon news, like I scroll past the Pokemon Go stuff because I'm just not interested. But when they talk about this on this podcast, because I like listening to them, they're saying stuff like they get money from Niantic to play the game, but like they've never talked on the podcast like, oh, hey, if you use our affiliate link to sign up for a Pokemon Go account, or like use our affiliate link in the game and then do these 10 things, like we're going to get money for it. Or like, like there's never been a sponsorship. The sponsorship that Niantic has, like, it's all kind of grassroots feeling where they'll send money for like a hotel, a ticket to Go Fest, and a plane ticket. So, they can fly this person out to LA, and then they play in LA. They stream the game when they're in LA. And then, you know, they're like required to make like a 10-minute video on YouTube. And then at the end of the day, like, and then they talk about it on the podcast as well. And then that's the way they're getting sponsorship. And that's the way they're kind of like getting their hooks into you, is like just through like this kind of like natural, like, oh, fans are talking about our game right now. Instead of like, you know, the Pokemon podcast telling me, hey, you go play this game. If you do, use our code to sign up. You're going to get 30 Pokeballs and 10 Great Balls. And then, you know, and then when I sign up with the affiliate link, then they get their payout. It seems like the payout is, you know, oh, I got a plane ticket to go to Pokemon Go Fest now this year in LA, and they're gonna put up my hotel and my meals, and then I'm gonna stream the game for them, and then, you know, talk about the game. So anyway, I just think the way Niantic currently manages Pokemon Go feels like a very big product of the fact that it comes from, and this is my last point in the game, and I'm kind of rambling, and we've gone a bit longer than I expected. And I'm sorry I've talked over you both a bit, but the fact that Nintendo and the Pokemon Company have not blocked this purchase, because people are theorizing that there's got to be things in the contract that prevent Niantic from just selling off an asset that's licensed from another company to a different company. So that what people are theorizing is that Niantic is that Nintendo and the Pokemon Company, Nintendo for Pikmin Bloom more so, and the Pokemon Company for Pokemon Go, have okayed this, which means I wonder if there's either things in place, contingencies in place to prevent Scopely from inserting this predatory monetization into the game, or the Pokemon Company just doesn't care what Scopely does with the game, as long as they protect the brand in the sense that like Pikachu still looks like Pikachu. You know, the world of Pokemon is still the world of Pokemon in its visual sense. But like, oh, if you have to watch an ad after you catch a Pikachu, they don't care. So you have to wonder what's going on behind the scenes with these companies that are very much like geared towards kids. And yeah, Nintendo and the Pokemon Company have their own predatory tactics and their own terrible business practices. But I would say, of all things considered, when you look at Scopely compared to like Nintendo, right? Like Nintendo, you know, treating its fan base a certain way, or not letting fans access older games, shutting down the eShop. I would say that stuff is way less terrible and way less horrifying as a consumer than, say, like I open up a Mario game, like I open up Mario Run, for example, which isn't a Niantic game, but like I open up Mario Run and like, oh yeah, you want Mario to get to the end of the level? Great, you got to watch an ad when you, or even worse, you play the level, but hey, if you want that power star to give you invincibility, you can pay $20 and we'll give you 10 power stars to get through every level. And Nintendo just doesn't do that. So you have to wonder if like these kind of predatory tactics to like those pay to win tactics, these freemium games are going to get worse under Scopely.
If I think about any Pokemon or Nintendo mobile game, and like I don't have experience with all of them, to be fair, like I played Sleep for a little bit, never played Cafe Remix or the MOBA game, but like I don't think, like I did play Masters for a while as well, but I can't remember any kind of traditional kind of advertising in any like Nintendo or Pokemon mobile game. I think the closest thing is like, you know, there's crossover brand stuff with Pokemon Go, and I think Animal Crossing. I don't even think Fire Emblem had, I only played that for a few months, but I don't remember any advertising in that as well. So it is going to be really interesting to see, you know, if there are any changes that happen with the advertising, because I think that could, you know, it could cause like a decline to like really increase in speed.
And, you know, I know we've been going on, but I just had a thought while you were saying that yeah, Nintendo has like this very like professional, polished, almost very like business-like, very clean branding, and I'm wondering if what we're gonna see with Scopely is, you know, Scopely is going to come in with all of their ways on how they know how to bring monetization to a game, and then maybe they're going to sort of like R&D the shit out of it and marry the two, where instead of like very blatant advertising, we're going to see like in Monster Hunter Now, there was like a Mr. Beast campaign where there wasn't ads, but they created this like really short series of quests that was like all Mr. Beast themed and Mr. Beast like outfits, and you had to help kill an electric monster because it took out his Wi-Fi so he couldn't stream. So it was like very like really ingrained in this. It was goofy, but it was really ingrained in the storytelling. So I wonder if that's like we're gonna see more of that maybe.
I could definitely see more of that. Yeah, like I think that's like a big possibility, especially like if Pikmin Bloom is still a thing, a viable thing that they want to continue. Definitely with Pikmin.
Over Miyamoto's dead body, they'll cancel that game.
But even with Pokemon, I feel that there's, they've done that kind of thing in like a small way already. So I could definitely see like, oh, wear the McDonald's uniform, come and, buy.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Go to McDonald's and get that. Yeah, like that kind of thing. Like it's certainly possible.
Yeah, maybe it'll just be what they've been doing, but just more.
Yeah. I do want to say that like as someone who I guess plays Pokemon Go the most, this could like honestly be the end of me playing.
It is for me.
Like honestly, like the main reason I still play Pokemon Go, and this seems probably silly, is that in my, what's it been, like 25 years of playing Pokemon, at least 20, like I have encountered 2 natural shinies in main series games. One Stantler and Legends Arceus, which that might not even count, and 1 male Combee. So
oh no, I'm so sorry.
So the fact that Pokemon Go gives me access to shiny Pokemon, as I have had the worst shiny luck of anyone I know, makes me feel nice and like I can access something that I don't have time to do. Like I don't have time to get the national dex or the shiny charm or make sandwiches or do Pokemon eugenics with breeding. Like I love Pokemon, but I don't have the time to do that. So the fact that, there's the little, sometimes Wednesday night events where there's outbreaks or the community days where I know that if I put an hour or 2 into the game, I can get I can get at least 1 shiny of a Pokemon that I've maybe always wanted a shiny of, or I think is a cool looking thing. So if there's predatory ads, or like honestly, if the shiny rates get worse, like there'll be no more reason for me to play the game. It's fun enough, but I have better things to do when I'm walking if I'm given that opportunity.
That's totally fair. I mean, part of me does want to wait and see before I fully purge my account, but I have gotten all my like really important rare Pokemon out of the game. I don't know. I view my little digital creatures as like my loved ones, like my pets. So I have 1 shiny Pichu that has a hat, and the hat Pokemon, as I know we talked about the hat Pikachus before, but you can't get them out of Pokemon Go and send them into the main series games through what they call Pokemon Home. For anyone who doesn't know, it's an app that lets you connect all the Pokemon games together into one place to store all your Pokemon. And so I'm planning to transfer all my Pokemon out, but all my hat Pokemon will have to stay in the game because those can't go outside of Pokemon Go. So it does pain me to know that like if I'm purging my account, I have to leave some babies behind. I don't like the way that feels to me. But at the same time, like I really don't need Scopely and Scopely's owner, who I've kind of danced around a little bit here, just because I don't have the nuance right now and the time to really go in depth with it. As you can see, we're already at an hour of talking about this, and like we've barely kind of scratched the surface, I feel. But I don't need that country having all my data. And I think that boils down to like even worse than predatory monetization, even worse than like feeling betrayed by Nintendo and the Pokemon company just saying like, yeah, we don't care what happens with this brand. Even more so, like I already have like so many places already have my data and I'm not comfortable with, but I also don't need a country that really doesn't want me to be alive anymore to have my data as well. So, and that's all I'm going to really say about that. You guys feel free to go as in depth as you want on that comment, and for listeners to kind of like extrapolate that how you will. But Yeah, I don't know, Lloyd. You haven't really opened the app anymore, but do you think you'd ever go back to it, knowing that Scopely owns it?
I have a morbid sense of curiosity on where it's gonna go. My poor storage has been so chocked. Like if I'm hanging out with some friends and they're like, "Oh, it's a community weekend," and get your Feebas or whoever the heck is up, I might open it and go, "All right, I've released or deleted or whatever." I affectionately say throw them in the wood chipper, the Pokemon that you turn into points, and and I'm like, oh, I've already gone through this and thinned it out as much as I can, and the only movement out, like the only forward movement, would be buying more storage, and then I just close the app and move on with my life. Every time it's a cycle, but I think I'm interested in what happens, but I don't know if I'm gonna play. And this definitely doesn't make me go, oh, wow, I gotta re-download it. No.
Yeah, that's fair. It definitely has the opposite effect of like, oh, I should probably uninstall that on my phone. So, any final thoughts before we wrap up the news segment? Don't everybody speak at once.
I think I said my sort of final thoughts with that sort of overview of my reasons for playing the game. I'm trying to think if there are any shinies. Well, the shiny Galarian Corsola is sort of my biggest white whale currently, or white living coral colony, or dead coral colony, I guess. But yeah, like I have plenty of shiny Raltsline. I have, I think, shiny Wooper of both regional variations. So like I have a lot of great shiny. I think I do actually have a shiny Feebas. So like I have enough that I feel that, like, you know, once I can trade them into my, you know, mainline series game, like, you know, I won't feel like if I do end up stop playing Pokemon Go completely, like I feel like I have acquired enough differently colored Pokemon, as Nintendo or Pokemon Company once wanted us to call them, to, you know, to make a nice little, you know, screenshot or, you know, selfie with a nice shiny team in the background.
Lloyd, any final thoughts?
No, nope. As with everything, as nerd culture gets more and more mainstream, they're like, oh, we can make more money out of this. Things will continue to try to take advantage of the fact that there is money to be bled out of everything. So maybe it's just me being older and cynical as time passes, but yeah, it doesn't feel new, and it feels like we might see this happen with more IPs.
Yeah. This is obviously a bit big for this episode now in terms of this topic, but I think you're right. I think we're only going to see more of this as time goes on, and this companies buying other companies, and all this consolidation is probably not going to improve. That's for sure. You know, the Disney's buying, you know, the 20th Century Foxes, and your Microsofts, you're buying your Activisions, and now your mobile game giants buying your other mobile game giants. It's only a matter of time before, you know, I feel like, you know, someone buys Sony or Nintendo, and then suddenly you've got... Anyway.
Oh, well, to loop it back, though, support indie devs. Steam,
yes.
Steam sale, yes.
Absolutely. And buying on Steam is great, too, because even though, yeah, if you've only got a Switch or you've only got a PlayStation, sure, I totally get that. But if you can buy on Steam and support on Steam, creators actually make significantly more money, more of their games profit. I think Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft take 30% off each purchase made on an indie game or any game. But on Steam, I think it's only 10% that they take. So Steam is, generally speaking, as far as corporations go, Steam is like significantly much more consumer friendly and dev friendly than any of the companies we've talked about today. So go to that Steam sale, True Avatars, and get your indie games. Play Raptor Boyfriend and Cychroma. Those are the two I really want to plug because I think they're great games. And when I did the interview episode, I think their games were actually on sale at the time, but I didn't plug that. So I want to take just a second now to plug those games. They didn't pay me. I just really love those devs. I really love those games. And I think everybody should play them. But thank you both for joining me and for both being on together for the first time. I'm glad you both had a chance to officially meet. So thank you both for joining.
Yeah, it was great.
Yes, thank you so much. It was nice being able to be on with both of you at once.
So after a quick break, I'll be back on with my partner, Nicole, and we're going to discuss Split Fiction. We'll be right back. Hi, True Avatars, and we are back from our break. And before we jump into the Split Fiction discussion, I just want to put out this reminder, because I forgot to at the beginning of the episode. If you like this podcast, please consider leaving a comment or review on your preferred podcast platform. True Avatars has only been rated a few times across all the podcast platforms, and admittedly, we have gotten a few more since I've started including this reminder, so I'm going to keep doing it and keep asking, because it helps with the show. It helps with visibility, it helps me know what you like and don't like. Yeah, so I can improve it as I find my footing with this show, because it's, we're on episode 25, but it still feels pretty new to me, so. Also, I do ask that you follow True Avatars, a queer video game podcast, wherever you do your doom scrolling. We have accounts on Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter, Threads. The handle is @TrueAvatars. You can also find the podcast on the official website, trueavatarspodcast.com, all one word. I highly recommend you check it out. It's a cute website. And actually, my guest today, who I'm just about to introduce, actually did the design for the website. So I would like to introduce Nicole, who is my guest, to discuss Split Fiction. Nicole's pronouns are she, her, and we have been together for almost 10 years. How are you, Nicole?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Yeah, it's been fun playing Split Fiction with you.
Yeah, it's actually been really fun. I've been enjoying it a lot so far, much more than I thought.
Yeah, well, it might interest listeners to know that we've played games. I mean, obviously, we've played games before together, but the last co-op game we tried playing together was Yoshi's Crafted World, which is the Nintendo Switch equivalent of like Yoshi's Woolly World. And I mean, I found that game very frustrating, and I found us fighting all the time. And I was wondering if we were going to be fighting through Split Fiction as well, but we haven't been.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just a lot more constant communication, I guess. And I guess we've learned something over the years. I don't know.
I mean, maybe, but also Yoshi's Craft. I think what I'm also gathering is maybe there's some personal growth there, but I also think Yoshi's Crafted World maybe just isn't that good of a game. Or Split Fiction is that good of a game.
Yeah, it's definitely been designed with 2 players in mind and a much more like tight-knit cooperation kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. But we've played other games together before. We've played Rocket League. We've done the Scarlet and Violet and Pokemon, like the raids. We've played Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee together. We did that on stream a few years ago, and we also streamed Kirby and the Forgotten Land before.
Yeah. I think maybe this one is like the first one where like the co-op element is much more of like a main element and not just like a bonus feature.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So they've designed it with that in mind. So it's impossible to play with one person, basically.
Yeah. I don't know if you play with one person, does it just give you a second, like a computer that does all the other actions?
I don't know. Try it.
Maybe we should try that later. So I know Split Fiction is very popular right now. It's getting a lot of great reviews, and we're going to get into our thoughts on the game and our thoughts on playing together. But just for some context, Split Fiction is the newest game from the developers who made the Game of the Year game It Takes Two, which is another co-op game. In fact, the studio is basically known for all of its co-op games. And most of the games, including this one, I think are designed specifically to be played with 2 people, as we were just saying. This game features 2 women as the player characters. Before, it's been mostly male player characters up until It Takes Two, where it's a male-female couple. And now this game is 2 women. And the Steam summary is as follows. Embrace mind-blowing moments as you're pulled deep into the many worlds of Split Fiction, a boundary-pushing co-op action adventure from the studio behind It Takes Two. Mio and Zoe, are contrasting writers. One writes sci-fi and the other writes fantasy, who become trapped in their own stories after being hooked up to a machine designed to steal their creative ideas. They'll have to rely on each other to break free with their memories intact, working together to master a variety of abilities and overcome diverse challenges while jumping between sci-fi and fantasy worlds in this unexpected tale of friendship. So before we jump into the discussion, Nicole, do you have any initial thoughts that you want to discuss?
I just remember you saying the moment we learned the 2 characters' names, you're like, I'm Zoe for sure. Like that was not even up for like debate. And I was like,
Which
okay.
is fun. Which is funny because actually I think I relate to Mio more as a character. She's kind of more grumpy and not that I'm more interested in sci-fi, but I'm much more interested in action, and her stories are more action based. So
yeah, I kind of like her stories better too. Like they do make her seem more grounded and like more serious, and the Zoe character is more like she's the fantasy writer and she's more like bubbly and optimistic.
yeah, she's definitely got her head in the clouds whereas Mio, I feel like Mio is kind of like fight the patriarchy, fight the machine kind of a person.
She's a rebel. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just like jump in with initial thoughts and I'll let you jump in wherever. But when we first started playing, I thought the game was super one-dimensional in all facets. Like the story, the gameplay, the puzzles, the combat, just like everything felt like just like paint by numbers, press this button and do this exact thing. Like there was no like real depth to any of the combat. Like all the puzzles felt very easy to complete with obvious solutions. Like the combat was all button mashing. The genres in place, like the game mixes a whole bunch of different genres and play styles. Like I know at one point we were playing bullet hell. There's other times where it's like a 3D platformer. There's other times where it's a side-scrolling platformer. And also just like, yeah, it mixes up sci-fi and fantasy genres too. So, and then there's the narrative where you've got this evil CEO who wants to steal the ideas. And he's like a mustache twirling evil CEO, bad guy, like, you know, this overlord. And he's just like, "Mwahaha, I'm going to get you into my machine and I'm going to pry your ideas out and I'm going to make all the money in the world." And his name is literally Raider. Like he's raiding your ideas. Like it's not that complicated of a concept for a villain. So.
Yeah, I get what you mean by like, it felt very like gimmicky in the beginning. Like it's just an excuse to like throw us into these worlds and get us from point A to point B. Like it felt a little bit forced, but I feel like maybe that's intentional because like they're trying to ease players into the world and they don't want to hit you with like really hard stuff right off the bat. And like we'll get into this later, but like as it goes on, it gets a little more complex. But I think, yeah, in the beginning, I found it like I didn't feel like I had to try too hard to like keep up with the story and like advance to the next plot point. So like, yeah, it's like very basic platforming, basic like shooting and just one button attack kind of things. But I think it was a choice that they made intentionally.
Yeah, I mean, I've played every genre that it mashed up together. I've played better versions of all those kinds of games. Like I've played better 2D platformers. I've played better 3D platformers. Like this doesn't live up, like when you're platforming, it doesn't live up to the likes of Mario or Astrobot. The bullet hell mini game that there was like doesn't really live up to even like an arcade game really.
Yeah. And you're saying like, yeah, it's sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh yeah, you say like it's very forgiving. Like the jumps are very like far. Like you can like kind of float down wherever you want to land, and like it kind of aims a lot of stuff for you. So like it's not meant to be hard, I guess.
Yeah, like it's really hard to make. Like, you'd have to be trying really hard to make a mistake at least early on. The other point I did have is about the characters. So we did talk about how they like sci-fi and fantasy. Like one likes sci-fi, one likes fantasy. One is bubbly. The other one is very like, yeah, just like a little more cynical, a little more grumpy is how I would describe her at first. Like she's barely cynical. She's more just like, I want to get my crap and I want to get out. And then of course, because they write different kinds of stories, their whole premise for fighting and not really like their interpersonal conflict is basically like, oh, I'm a sci-fi writer, I can't get along with a fantasy writer, which feels really silly and underthought.
Like I'm sure like if you're a writer, like you're gonna be like more open-minded and like, you know, there's other genres out there and you've chosen to focus on something like that you maybe prefer, but like, yeah, like you want other people, you know, what you write is not going to be everyone's cup of tea, so you should know, like, keep that in mind.
Yeah,
like not everyone's a sci-fi writer, not everyone's a fantasy writer. So, but I get that they're trying to like make them like conflicting at first and then hopefully become friends by the end.
Yeah. Well, I should note too, like there are obviously, we're going to get into spoilers a little bit with later in the game, but we haven't finished the game. So we're only going to talk up to about the halfway point, which is where I think we are. Because the way the story of the game works is that like, yeah, right at the beginning of the game, there's like a 5-minute cutscene, and then bam, you're into this like digital world where they're trying to steal your ideas. So you're playing through each of the characters' stories that's being pulled from their mind. So like one might be a story from their childhood that they wrote, and one might be a story they wrote recently. And then you'll flip flop between like there's a sci-fi storyline that you're playing through, and that's like a couple hours of gameplay. And then you go through a fantasy story, that's a couple hours of gameplay. And then as you play through those, you find out there's quote unquote side stories. So there'll be like a little portal, and the player, the actual characters in the game will tell you like, oh, hey, Zoe, over there, I see a side story. And then so you jump over there and you go through the portal together. And then you're playing like, I want to say like a 5 to 10 minute mini story that generally has some mini games in it, or it's like a brand new gameplay style. So we'll be talking about everything up to the second. So we played through one major fantasy story at the beginning, and then one sci-fi story. Sorry, it's a sci-fi and then a fantasy, and we just finished that first fantasy major story. And we've at the beginning of that, you jump back into sci-fi. So I assume they're just going to go back and forth between the two. And if I had to guess, I feel like we're either halfway or getting close to the halfway point. So that's how much we'll be talking about. So if you don't want to be spoiled up until this point, I suggest jumping out of the podcast for now. Maybe skip ahead to Queer Game of the Week in the show notes, and then maybe come back when you've played more of the game or are ready to hear more of our conversation. Okay, so I forget why I brought up the spoiler note, but basically, so I was going to say that there's like this, in the side story, there's like a hang gliding, like 10-minute thing where you're like gliding through like a sci-fi futuristic world on a train heist. And you're gliding through all these obstacles, and then you land on the train and you're like running on the train. And then, so it's like an action platformer, I guess, in a sense, but with this gliding mechanic that's not really found anywhere else in the game. It's like they designed and programmed this entire mechanic just for like 5 minutes of gameplay.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Oh, yeah, so that was a side story, right? Yeah. So like,
yeah,
within the fantasy.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just like trying to backtrack, like rewind my memories. But yeah, we were playing through like the shape-shifting fantasy arc.
Yeah,
And
so there's the first one where you're trying to stop the evil. There's another evil CEO or like mayor of some town in some sci-fi city that looks kind of like Blade Runner, and that's the first arc. That's the
cyber
first story.
ninjas.
The cyber ninjas. And then the second one was the Monkey King one.
Mm-hmm.
The Ice King one, and there's a Monkey King in it, but you're trying to stop the evil Ice King from freezing over this fantasy world. And then in terms of side stories, there's the one where we're pigs, right? Or one of us was a pig?
That was one of my favorite ones.
Yeah? What did you like about it?
Yeah, okay, so we're both pigs, and we each have different powers. So I think mine was I could like launch myself with my rainbow farts.
Right.
And you were like a springy.
Oh yeah, I could like spring up and down, kind of like Spoink in
Yeah.
Pokemon. It was like a spring pig.
Slinky pig. And what were we doing? We were trying to find these like apples to like open up gates to the next area.
Oh yeah, the barn doors were like literally talking.
Yes.
And saying like, feed me apples. And anyway, if this sounds silly, it's supposed to, because it was a story that Zoe's character wrote like when she was like 5 or 6 years old or something like that. Like it was supposed to be from a young, like all this, like I said, all the stories come from different parts of their lives. So far, all of Mio's stories, who writes sci-fi, all her stories have been from her like recently in her life in terms of where she is as a character. But a lot of Zoe's are from like all over the place in different different time periods of her life. So
like, oh, it's like when I was like 5, I like had an idea, like what if these pigs could like talk, or I drew this picture, and like, yeah, there's just very random ideas that somehow like got translated into this whole world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that. I can talk about a spoiler, right?
Yeah.
I love that we turned into hot dogs at the end.
Oh yeah.
And we were just bouncing around as like a sausage, and we had to like cook ourselves and put condiments on and land in like the hot dog bun.
And then at the end, someone picks you up and eats you.
Yeah.
So these side stories, it's all like, the narrative is all like, yeah, you're rushing through to play through the ideas to quote unquote save them. It's not really explained how you're saving the ideas by like playing through all the narratives. But you are chasing what's called like a glitch, and the glitch is like a portal to each story. And so you're trying to reach each glitch to like break the machine that you're in that's stealing your ideas, and then eventually stop the CEO is where the story is going. So these side stories kind of contribute to this glitch a little bit. Sorry, when I was thinking about being eaten at the end, that's like the mouth is like the portal where the glitch is, and then you pop back out into the main story.
Yeah.
That's why I went on that tangent there. But yeah. And the bullet hell mini game that we were talking about was actually from a bit later in the game. I think that was actually the train heist, wasn't it? Was that the same?
It might have been, yeah.
All of Mio's stories kind of blend together a little.
They are, yeah. They all take place in like some sort of cyberpunky Blade Runner kind of world. And yeah, a lot of them are like reminiscent of other games. Like we were talking about, was it Journey or like Planet of Lana?
Yeah.
That you had played before.
We'll talk about this a bit more later, because we're going to get into like why at first I thought I wasn't going to like the game because it was so one-dimensional, but actually it got more complex as it went along. But at one point, like you were saying, other games, there's like a cutter from Final Fantasy in it, right?
A lot of things that reminded me of, yeah, the cutter especially. And like just the pools of stuff. Like it was like, remember in like the beginning of Final Fantasy VII Remake, the like pools of materia or something in the reactors.
Oh yeah.
Like, it felt very similar, which I enjoyed.
Yeah. There's also swinging mechanics. It's not as in-depth as Spider-Man, but it feels as good to like, you'll like grapple and then swing across things, and it's just like in the Spider-Man games when you're swinging. So like they've taken like bits and pieces from other games, and like it's this story, it's like, even though the certain parts are like one-dimensional, what I'm realizing is like, first off, the puzzles are becoming more complex. The story is going deeper as you go, but also the story is like the whole game is really the sum of its parts, and more than the sum of its parts. It's not like these like one things like, okay, yeah, that you could play. Like I think the next area we're going into might be a Metroidvania. And of course it'll be much more simple 3D Metroidvania than say like Metroid Prime is, but it's still going to like the fact that it's all these different little pieces of different games, and the fact that like, yeah, they spend 5 minutes on a gliding mechanic that probably isn't going to come back is what I think is kind of really cool about it.
Yeah, I wonder, maybe I'm hoping that they'll actually like revisit some mechanics and maybe add another little thing on top. So like, okay, you've mastered like level 1 of this style, and then next time when it comes back, we're going to add something else on top of it. Like maybe you'll have to fly while shooting. Like, I know before they would split up the roles. Like one person would pilot the ship that you were on, while the other person like shoots on a turret or something to shoot down whoever's chasing you. And yeah, they're like, if either of you fails at your job, you both die. Like the pilot crashes into a wall, or the gunner fails to hit an enemy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's already getting to be more unforgiving. When we were fighting the Ice King, like if you messed up twice, you were gonna die. But like at the first boss, the first time you fight an endgame boss in the sci-fi world in Mio's first story, I felt like you could take like 5 or 6 hits before you actually died, whereas with the Ice King, you could take 1 or 2 and then you died. So it was much less forgiving as you went along. But yeah, so let's before we talk about specific things that we really liked, I just want to say that like, yeah, so it started off very one-dimensional, and as the game went along, like it became much more complex. I'm just gonna check out my notes here, but like the puzzles specifically became a lot more difficult to solve, and not only were they more difficult to solve, but they required like very precise timing between you and your gaming partner. So like there was one part where you like I had to like help you climb across things, and if I like didn't help you, if I didn't time it right, you would die, and then we'd both have to start over. And then you were also doing that for me at one point where I had to. And then there's another part where like one of us is driving a car and the other one of us is like shooting. And if we're not communicating, like I was worried this game we were gonna, like Yoshi's Crafted World, we were going to be yelling at each other. But actually this game I feel has brought us closer together, because it's required us to be so deliberate in our communication and constant too. Like you can't just like it at first it was like teaching you, okay, you have to communicate with your gaming partner. And then it was like, okay, you have to communicate with your gaming partner constantly, because if you don't tell each other what the other is doing at all times, you're both gonna fail this mini game or whatever. And the first time I really noticed how intense that was the bomb mechanic. The bomb was it the bomb game show? Yeah, the bomb game show. Do you want to explain that one? What that one was?
Sure. Yeah. So I think this was one of the sci-fi side stories. So yes, there's like this computer, like a SpongeBob, like Karen kind of computer host. So she's like, she's trying to. I feel like she's trying to kill us, but like she's just like, so you're, so basically there's a bomb that's being thrown back and forth between you all the time.
Yeah, it's a hot
and you
potato.
Can't, like hot potato. Yes,
it's a hot potato. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So like you can't hold on to it too long, and it's also like you have to advance. Like there's platforming involved, and you have to throw the bomb into like a container to stop it from exploding or explode safely and not kill you. And there are like maybe around 3 levels of this, and getting increasingly more complex with more obstacles.
Yeah, at first it was just like jump forward, pass the bomb back and forth. And then once you figured that out, it was like, okay, you have to dodge all the things that are attacking you, also throwing the bomb back and forth together while screaming at, well, not screaming at each other, but we were definitely getting much more intense as we like, because like you had to be in constant communication. Like you had to like look at your partner, you had to look at the screen, you had to look at where the bomb was, you had to look at where you were going.
Yeah, you had to like press a button in order to catch the bomb as well as throw. So we had to definitely time it.
And you had to aim it too. You couldn't just like look ahead and then hope the bomb would go wherever it needs to go. Like you had to aim at your partner. And it didn't give you like crosshairs to show you where you were aiming. It was just like aim in the general direction of your partner.
And then it would like kind of be homing to your person.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh my gosh. I know we were stuck on one of the maybe like a third level. Yeah. Oh my gosh. The one where there's like a robot that's chasing you. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the robot chases the person with the bomb.
Yeah.
So you have to keep passing the bomb back and forth constantly, more so than the previous attempts, because it'll just turn and go after you immediately.
Yep. I died so many times.
We both did. Yeah,
and
it
like,
took a while.
Yeah, the good thing is that like if you die and your partner's still alive, like it keeps going, but if you both die, then you start back at the very beginning of the checkpoint or round.
Yeah. The nice thing though is that when you're, aside from the mini games like the game show we're talking about, like the main story, there's constant checkpoints. Like if you get past one more slightly difficult area, like one swinging gap to a platform, and then you die after that platform, it won't take you back to the beginning of the level. It'll just take you back to the last platform that you were on, which is nice. So you don't have to backtrack very much. Like you don't have to redo all your work very much or very often. Mm-hmm. So like if you get to if you have an enemy has a health bar, as long as you reach a checkpoint in the health bar, like you've taken out a quarter of the health or an eighth of the health or like half the health, it will start you back at where you last got to a checkpoint in the health bar. You don't have to restart the whole boss fight, for example.
Yeah, I was grateful for those.
Yeah, it makes my impatience easier to be tested.
Yeah, the puzzles definitely got like not as obvious. Like sometimes the thing that you had to do would be like hidden around a corner. You had to like hunt for it, or like it could be underwater, like in the case of the fantasy shape-shifting arc.
Oh yeah, so that one,
like
yeah. No, you can explain it.
So each character can shapeshift into 2 different things, like one smaller thing and like one bigger thing. And they each kind of have different abilities. Like I think Mio's was like a aquatic creature, like an otter for the small creature. And then the big one was like a monkey that could like ground pound and attack and swing on vines and things. And what was yours? You were like a fairy?
Yeah, the fairy could flit. So you had like an endless jump. And over time, you would slowly go lower and lower. So you couldn't always platform perfectly. But for the most part, you could stay in the air almost for at least 30 seconds to a minute, depending on where you were. Maybe it wasn't that long, but it felt much longer than, say, like your double jump and your dash. You could like flit as long as you wanted. And then that was the small one. And then the big transformation was like an ent or like a walking tree. It looks kind of like Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy. And then you could interact with the environment. You could extend your branches into like leaves and then control Mother Nature. Like you could move a tree up and down, or And then later in that same level, there was also the part where Zoe actually goes into the earth and she becomes Mother Nature herself. So you're like walking around as a tree, and you've got to like move the platform that your partner is on to like get them to the other side. So I was like a walking spider tree thing that could like shoot laser set. Like, it was weird. It wasn't actually a laser. It was a screen, but it looked like a laser. And you were shooting down like gates to get you through while you were carrying your partner on the back of this spider thing.
Yeah. And I had to keep like enemy monkeys off your back or whatever.
Yeah. And then there was like, I was a log, and I had to like spin the log so you could get past every obstacle. And we had to constantly talk about like, okay, I'm going to turn left now. Okay, I'm going to rotate it right now. That way you knew which way to go.
Yeah. I really loved that. Like, everything was always a new concept. Like, it doesn't matter if you're like not good at games. Like, I'm not good at games. But like, because it was like a new thing every time, I felt like we're both starting on the same page. And so it's just a matter of like, okay, how quickly can you like pick up this new mechanic and then communicate to each other like what needs to be done when in order to get from A to B. Yeah, it's really fun. Like, I think they did a good job of balancing how big each person's role is. Like, it didn't feel like one person's carrying the team.
Yeah. And also it was nice too that in terms of balancing, if one person got to do a specific role and the other person didn't, the next time this opportunity came along, they'd have like, let's say Mio was the one driving and then Zoe was the one shooting. They switched it up so then Mio was the one shooting and Zoe was the one driving. Assuming I just said that correctly. But yeah, basically they swapped roles. But at that point we had actually switched controllers because I wanted to do the other thing and you wanted to do the other thing. And then we ended up doing the same role anyway. So don't switch characters.
Yeah, pick one and stick with it. It's like when you were playing Pokemon Black or White and then you wanted to like see what the other one was like for 2. Yeah.
Yeah, I bought Black 1 and White 2, and you're supposed to buy Black 1 and then Black 2, or White 1 and then White 2. Yeah. Stay the course. Don't trade off. Unless you want to like permanently hand off the control, like trade off that character for the other one. But
yeah, they designed it.
No, it's really well designed actually. At first I was like, why is this so simple? And now I'm like, actually, this is very, very, very well thought out. The more you go into it, the harder it's getting, the more interesting it's getting, the more creative it's getting. I almost feel bad for judging it so early on because it's so well designed. I was like, how did this game get like 10 out of 10s like across the board? And then now I'm like, as we're getting into it, I'm like, wow, no wonder this, like, I'm glad I spent the whatever $70 it was to get this game at release, because at first I was like, maybe I regret this purchase. Maybe I should have waited for a sale. But this is a game, like, if you buy it full price and you have someone you like and trust to play with, it's a game you will very much enjoy, and it will probably, whoever you play with, bring you closer together. And then you also mentioned too that like it felt very easy to jump into, like if you don't know games very well. Like I think it actually might be a good game to like introduce to kids or introduce to anyone who might never have played games before. Like I might consider showing this to my parents, and then they might enjoy it too. I don't know about the harder stuff as you go along. I think it does. I don't know if my parents have the patience. They have the skill and the ability, but I don't know if they have the patience for the harder stuff. But I think especially, kids. I think this game especially would be really good for young girls, maybe in the age range of like 5 to 10 years old, who are like either never played games before or are relatively new to games. I know when Princess Peach Showtime came out last year, I heard a lot of social media personalities talking about how they were getting their daughters into the game, and they were excited for it, and they played through Princess Peach Showtime. I think this would be a good like next game for those kids that play Princess Peach Showtime to play with like maybe their father or their mother who introduced them to that game in the first place. Because it does give you like a beginner's entry level kind of game, but also it gives you a nice smattering of different genres to try out. Maybe you're like, oh, I really liked Bullet Hell actually. I want to go find more Bullet Hell games to play. I don't know. Has this game inspired you to go play different genres of games?
I think so. It's more made me like nostalgic for the games that like it reminds me of. Like, yeah, the Bullet Hell one reminded me of this PlayStation 1 game. Like, I can't remember what it's called, but you could choose from different fighter jets, and you were like just trying to dodge like all these bullets while firing your own, and you could like collect power-ups, and there's like a final boss. Like, I don't know what it's called.
That's okay.
But
there's a lot of bullet hell games. We can figure it out later, and I can put it in the show notes if we remember.
What else? What else haven't we seen yet? Like, what genres are going to be coming up? I feel like, is there like a racing?
I mean, we did driving.
Yeah, there's like a motorbike.
Yeah, when you said like a mechanic might come back, like I think driving might come back. Either the motorcycles. Oh, the motorcycle race was actually really fun. As you're like jumping, you're racing not just like your motorcycle on roads, like you're jumping from like building to building on these motorcycles as you like play with gravity. Oh, there's gravity mechanics too, actually, kind of like Mario Galaxy has. I forgot about that.
The Cyber Ninjas one.
Yeah, you have to play with like the puzzle is like figuring out like where to be where in the gravity you need to be, like on the wall or on the ceiling to figure out the puzzle. And I know Mario Galaxy plays with that as well, so that's a kind of a rare mechanic to see in a game. You compared it to Inside, and I definitely see some of that in the side-scrolling sections.
Yeah, they definitely like to play with perspective a lot. So most of the time, it's like a 3D, like you're going forward, and but sometimes they'll switch up to be like side-scroller, or even has it been a top-down?
I was thinking there hasn't been a top-down yet. Oh no, actually, wait, there was. Was there not a top-down section? Because I was comparing the game to 2D and Top D, where you were side-scrolling and I was top-down or something like that. Like I was on the wall.
Could each have a different perspective for sure.
Yeah. So like my first criticism was like, oh, they've done this like one-time mechanic, but obviously it has to be kind of simple if they're only going to do it once. You don't want to make it too in-depth because then people aren't going to be able to do it. But also, it would take a lot more development time to make it a much more complicated version. But like you said, they could bring stuff back later in a more complicated version of it. We haven't finished the game, so we don't know yet. But I do want to play more, and I know we had to stop playing to come record the podcast. But I really want to go back to playing it because it's so well done.
It definitely makes me want to play It Takes Two, because maybe they did test like a lot of the similar mechanics, and because we haven't played it together, we can't like make comparisons, but I would like to go back and see like how much of it maybe started from their first game and then that they brought over and refined for Split Fiction.
Yeah, it's not their first game, but it was their first like really successful game. They've done, I think, 2 other games before that. I saw this director posted a video where he was talking about all the people that complained that this game was woke because it's 2 women player characters, but their first 2 games were both men, I think, or boys, and then It Takes Two was a man and a woman, like a couple. The only reason I haven't played It Takes Two yet is not just because we haven't played it together, but I don't like the moral of that story where it's a couple trying to like, they shrink down and they become toys or something like that while their kid is like running around the house and they have to kind of like navigate their way around the house to like shrink, like to grow back to normal size or whatever. And they're getting a divorce. So I think the game is about like, the message is like, you should just deal with your problems and overcome them so you can be there for your kid instead of getting a divorce. And I know there's a lot of people who had criticisms of that, but from a gameplay perspective, for it to win Game of the Year, it must be a very strong game. And maybe I do have it somewhere. Was it free on PlayStation Plus? Either way, I know we have a copy of it digitally somewhere to play it. So yeah,
maybe one day.
Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts?
Just kind of can't wait to get back into it. I want to see where it goes and like how complex they can take it, because it's essentially like a bunch of mini games in one game. And yeah, I'm just very excited to see what else they've got in store for us.
How do you feel about the cute animals in the game? All the cute animal designs.
Oh yeah, I love them so far. Like, we just defeated a boss that turns out like he's like a little kitty cat. But yeah, I know at one point we had to move some giant birds. They're
giant like baby birds.
Baby birds. Yep.
Yeah. It's kind of mean, actually. You have to put one of them on a seesaw, and then you have to push down on the seesaw. One of you has to push down on the seesaw, so it launches the egg up, and then the other person has to like slingshot a tree branch to hit the egg into a branch, like a gate that's made of branches, to break it. And the bird is in like partially coming out of an egg. So I guess the idea, And the game acknowledges how mean it is. Like the character's like, this is real. Like Mio looks at Zoe, who wrote the story, and she's like, this is messed
It's like,
up.
what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
But at least you're helping him hatch. You've freed him.
Yeah. It's really kind of scary when it happens. Although I did say it's a kid-friendly game. I do want to say that, like, I think there's some swearing in the game. I should note that if there's anyone listening who's like, oh, I want to show this to my kid. Just keep in mind, I think there's some swearing. I don't know if there's any way to like censor it. I think I heard someone say shit earlier when we were playing.
Oh yeah, like when you die.
Yeah. So that's about it though. It's like harmless. There's no slurs. There's nothing.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. And the story is becoming more complex. Like you think it's just like, okay, two people, they're getting their stories published. So they go to this sketchy, like Elon Musk, Tesla kind of like big conglomerate with a scary person. And then it turns out like, yeah, Mio's got financial problems because her father is sick. We really don't know what Zoe's in-depth deal is, but Zoe's much more interested in sharing her backstory with Mio than Mio is in sharing with Zoe. So we just know Zoe's very nostalgic about her childhood, and she puts herself and her life into her stories. And Mio does as well, but Mio doesn't like talking about why she does or what specifically inspired it. Like the entire first major sci-fi story is about an unpaid parking ticket. And so the ninjas are going to kill the owner of this company or the owner of the parking company or whatever it is, so they can not have to pay their parking ticket or something like that. And if you don't pay your parking ticket, the company comes after you to kill you anyway.
Throws cars at you.
Yeah. So, and the whole time they're kind of bickering about like what inspired this story. And it's clear that Mio just really hates capitalism. Like she feels like the Luigi of the world.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
So not Luigi Mario, but Luigi the CEO killer. She doesn't seem to like people in charge of financial things, which is relatable. I think despite me playing Zoe, like I said, I feel Mio much more relatable. But I think there's parts of each of them that are kind of relatable to both of us. So
yeah. Just thinking like, do I relate more to Mio or Zoe? I don't know. It's been a while since I've like been creative and tried to write a story. And I mean, you definitely like you write what you know, and sometimes it's fun to like vent with words on a page and think of like, oh, what would you do to these people in power who are responsible for all your problems?
Yeah, I think Mio likes to have power fantasies in her story. She's worried about the environment. Like there's one mini game where you have to work together to like shield yourselves from like a dying sun, and every few seconds, and it gets faster and faster as you go, but the sun kind of explodes. And so it's clearly talking about like the environment and like just like using up natural resources, and you know, so I think Mio's a little more in touch with like I want to call it progressivism, but that's not really the right word. But she's much more interested in the environment. She's much more interested in like all the problems that the future will cause. Whereas, I mean, they both seem to hate the CEO and having their stories taken. So they're both kind of anti-establishment a little bit, but that's the word I'm looking for, is anti-establishment. I feel like, but Mio is much more anti-establishment, whereas like Zoe's more like escapism instead of anti-establishment. Like she'd rather just like press a reset button and forget all her problems, whereas Mio's like, how about we destroy our problems? So
how do you think it's going to end?
Oh, I don't know. There'll probably be some revelation that actually changes the entire story around a little bit. Like something you've trusted the whole time, and then suddenly it's like, because I don't think it's going to be very one note, like mustache twirling villain. I don't think he's going to be redeemed. I think they've like spent a lot of time just building him up to be just like a one note enemy. So you have a goal to get to the end of the game. But I think we'll probably learn something about Mio or Zoe that we thought was true and is actually not true. It's actually the opposite. I do think that there's going to be another sci-fi story, which we're playing through now, another fantasy story, which we'll play through after, like a major one. And then you'll think it's over because they'll have each played through 2 stories each. And then I think there'll be like a 5th story that's maybe in a completely new genre, where maybe the CEO enters the game and you have to actually physically like interact with him and fight him and challenge him in some way. That would be my guess. But what do you think? How do you think it's going to end?
Yeah, I think the company's definitely going down for sure. Yeah, I think the CEO, I thought he was maybe going to step in when he was trying to communicate with Mio and Zoe in the kind of the hub world, I guess. So I feel like he's getting ready to like take things into his own hands and like, I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
Thanos.
Yeah, I think I'm just excited to see where it goes. And even if the story stays one note, and though so far it's not, so far the story is evolving the same way the gameplay mechanics are, but I think as long as the gameplay mechanics stay very fresh and interesting, it's like, this could be a game of the year for me. Like, it's so good. And there's really nothing queer about the game. None of the characters are queer, although to be honest, there isn't a lot of like romantic or sexual like implications of anything. The characters are just they're just in their world. Like, it's just shooting and jumping and saving the day and saving the world. There's no romance sub story really.
Mm-hmm.
The only element of love is that Mio's worried about her father and Zoe loves her family, stuff like that. But there isn't mention of boyfriends or girlfriends, anything like that. So
There still could be opportunity for it later, maybe. But right now, yeah, it's definitely not the focus.
yeah,
It's just a good old action. Like,
yeah. But that is to say, I wouldn't call it a hetero game either, like a cis-het game. It's just like, but if you're looking for queer vibes, this game isn't it. But if you're looking for a nice feminist, like two women punching their way through the world kind of action-packed fantasy story.
Girl power.
This is a good game for that too. And especially, like I said, like for younger girls playing it, it's definitely a good thing to show young girls, to show them that like, there's like really cool female characters out there, but also there's good video games to play, and that like this world is also yours just as it is for men, because there's so many games for like younger boys to play. Even though Mario's very kind of a gender neutral game, like it's still, you're playing as Mario, right? The fact that they made Princess Peach Showtime and that mostly girls played it shows the fact that like there should be games for girls as well. And I wouldn't say Split Fiction is a game for girls specifically, but it is a game that like will probably also appeal to girls much more heavily. Like, it'll be more of a 50-50 split, no pun intended, between men and women playing this game, as opposed to like games with a male protagonist that might scare away more girl players.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do you feel like would it hit the same if it were two male characters going through this situation?
For the story, probably not. If it was the same, I don't know. I don't think so. Part of the reason that did draw me to it was the fact that it was two women as the characters.
Yeah. I feel like it's more relatable to us. Like, we can see ourselves in them.
Yeah. I mean, growing up too, even before I transitioned, like I did prefer stories with women, but also I watched lots of stories with men. So I've never been really put off by stories about men or boys in my, like in games or movies or books. I think if there's a human element to any character, they're relatable regardless of gender, which is kind of nice. And I do think this game is that. Like, I think the story doesn't change super heavily if they're men, because like I fundamentally said, like the fact that they're women is just like really not relevant to the story so much. I don't think the story changes too much. Maybe the fantasy stuff would be a little less whimsical coming from a man, but like the sci-fi stuff could be written by a man or a woman, I think. So, and it is interesting too that like the players are two girls, but then the villain is a man. Yeah. So, and there are also women villains in the actual storylines too. So, I don't think there's any commentary about gender in the game really. So, yeah.
I think it's, I don't know. I like them as they are. Like, I like all the design choices.
Yeah. I like how everything's color coded.
Yeah.
Like each player is given a color, and then if you see that color out in the world, that's for your character to interact with in the puzzle.
Yeah. Oh, I know it's like it was depending on which, or like depending on which character you are, your PS5 controller will also light up in your character's color. It's a fun detail.
Yeah, I like that too. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up? I feel like I've been rambling a lot, so I want to give you a chance to say a piece. Say your piece.
I think we've covered it all. I'm just excited to play through it to the end with you.
Yeah, me too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been together almost 10 years, and I think this is the first time. Like, I really like my single player games. I'm not a big fan of sharing in general, but like in terms of playing games, like I do like it when it's just me and I'm like in control of things. But this time I'm like, I'm very invested, and I'm like I said, like the Yoshi. It could be the fact that the other games we've played that are co-op focused haven't been as important. The co-op hasn't been as important to the gameplay, so I'm not sure how much of it is us like our personal growth in our relationship versus the game is so well designed to encourage positive communication between you and your gaming partner. So I do wonder like how much of that is us and how much of that is just like Split Fiction is just a really fucking good game.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think it would be a fun game to like stream, and like because it's almost as fun. Like I hear us when we're like talking to each other as we're playing, and like it'd be fun to watch other people go through the same challenges and see like how long it takes for them to like get it and work together.
Yeah. Both of us have at different times been like struggling with a puzzle where we just miss a detail in the world and we don't know what to do. And sometimes it's you and sometimes it's me. Like it just vary. And I'm like, oh, I just missed this like green icon here on the wall. And oh, if I had done this, and like the bird puzzle we were talking about took us probably like 20 minutes to figure out because we were like, we saw what all the pieces were, but we didn't know how they went together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's just a learning process. Like, we're learning the game's language, and like we know, like, oh, if something's not like clicking, like we have to just look around a bit more and try different things. It's like quite open. Yeah. Like, there's not a lot of areas you can't go in the world. I mean, like, you can explore everything, and like, there's places you go, like, you'll die if you go too far, but
yeah,
for the most part, lets you wander.
Though, yeah, it's also, you can wander a bit, but I do think it's still very much a hallway simulator. There isn't like big open area. You don't ever come to any open areas where you can kind of just wander around. And I don't think that necessarily makes it a bad thing. It doesn't feel like if there's a platform you can see, you can jump on it, but you can't go too much farther than that. It doesn't like do the thing in games where you see a platform up against a wall and you want to jump on it and then you just slide down because they haven't put a hitbox there or like an invisible platform to tell the character to actually stand there. So you can just like kind of jump around, but by design, it's a very linear story and a very linear gameplay because I think, the game probably can't render two different environments at once as you wander around. So, because it's rendering the game twice, right? So
I'm amazed that like it's doing as well as it is so far.
Yeah, I don't think this game, maybe it comes to Switch 2 and runs okay, but this game would never run on the Nintendo Switch ever.
Yeah, it's just too much going on. And it does feel a bit cramped at times with the split screen, but yeah, sometimes I like how it sometimes comes together to merge for certain things.
I like that too. Well, on that note, we won't spoil anything else because there's nothing else to spoil, but I do recommend, I think we both recommend anyone who has someone to play with to play Split Fiction. And if not, if you're playing remotely with someone, definitely communicate through your headset or communicate through a separate app like Discord. Like, you have to be in constant communication. Maybe not at first, in the first few hours of the game, but as you get into the second major world, which is the fantasy world, you'll absolutely have to be constantly communicating and reacting and talking to whoever you're playing with. So yeah, thank you for joining me, Nicole. It's been fun playing this game with you, and I can't wait to play more. And thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
And we're just going to take a very short break because it'll just be me as I get into Queer Game of the Week. Hi, True Avatars. It's just me now, and it's time for Queer Game of the Week. But super quickly, that new music you just heard and all the music on the show was composed by Diana Coatzin. Diana can be found on Instagram at Diana Coatzin Music, and Coatzin is spelled Kotzin. Please go check out her work. She's amazing. So this week's queer game is The Quarry. So normally I would like to platform an indie game, but we've talked about, at least all the ones that I've played recently, I've talked about on the show at length. So I don't want to just repeat games you've already heard about. So I thought it would be really cool to highlight a game I really love. And going into it, I had no idea that there was going to be any queer characters. And also the story too is like one of my favorite kind of like archetypes of horror movies. When I watch horror movies or play horror games, I'm like, oh, this would be cool if this thing was in here. And then it ended up being in there. But anyway, so the game this week is The Quarry. So if you've heard of Until Dawn, which is a PlayStation exclusive, this game is kind of like the quasi sequel to that game. So it's made by Supermassive Games, and it's got basically the same narrative style. It's choice based. So think like Life is Strange, except it's much more like a playable movie. Whereas Life is Strange, You do get to do a little bit of digging and investigating in those games. This game is more like kind of like button pressing your way through a playable movie with a little bit of exploration. Not too much though, mostly for just collectibles. So if you're looking for something with like a lot of meat to the gameplay, this is not for you. But if you want something that like was inspired by horror movies, this is like one of the best games you could possibly play. In fact, I think it's even better than Until Dawn in a lot of ways. So like I said, it's very similar to Until Dawn. A bunch of kids are trapped in the wilderness with a mystery to solve about what's really going on, and a terrible creature lurking nearby, slowly picking them off slasher flick style. So it takes place over a single night as these camp counselors try to survive the night, basically just like Until Dawn. So the Steam summary is as follows. When the sun goes down on the last night of summer camp, 9 teenage counselors are plunged into an unpredictable night of horror. The only thing worse than the blood-drenched locals and creatures hunting them are the unimaginable choices you must make to help them survive. So the fun in the game's branching narratives is that you can kind of pick through your various choices which characters live and survive to sunrise and which ones die. That's basically Until Dawn as well, but in this game you can kind of decide something else that happens to them. And I don't want to spoil it because I'm going into this game, I had no idea what the creature was. And Until Dawn, I won't spoil what the creature was in that either, but I feel like it's much more well known what the creature is in that. This game, they don't advertise it at all or tease it at all. I went into it hoping it would be this creature, thinking it never would be, and then suddenly it was, and I was like, this is so cool. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say about the creature, because I really do want people to go in knowing as little as possible. But the draw for this game, or there's actually a bunch of draws, but this game has an even bigger Hollywood cast than Until Dawn. Until Dawn had a few TV actors. It had Rami Malek right before he kind of got big. But for the most part, like, it didn't have a huge well-known cast. It had a few, like I said, famous-ish stars. But this game has like kind of an A-list cast, at least in my opinion, A-list. You might disagree, but if you're a horror fan, it's definitely A-list. So you've got David Arquette in the game. So you know him as Dewey from Scream. The Scream series. You've got Lynn Shay, and she plays Elise in the Insidious series. So the wise old lady who knows how to communicate with ghosts and explore the ether. It also features Lance Henriksen. You know him as Bishop from the Alien series. He also played Carl Manfred in Detroit Become Human. It's also got Brenda Song from The Social Network, and you also might know her as London Tipton from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. Ted Raimi. Ted Raimi, you probably don't know the name, but you know his face. So he's Spider-Man director Sam Raimi's brother, and he's the dude who's always getting yelled at by J. Jonah Jameson in those movies. There's also Ariel Winter. You know her as Alex Dunphy, the middle child in Modern Family. And finally, there's also Justice Smith. You know him as Tim Goodman in the live-action Detective Pikachu, Simon in the Dungeons & Dragons movie, and Owen, the main character in I Saw the TV Glow. First off, go watch I Saw the TV Glow, because it's awesome. A trans movie, if there ever was one. And Justice Smith, the actor, also identifies as queer. So that's pretty cool. And I think he's the only queer actor in the game. However, the game does feature 2 gay characters. One of them, Ryan, played by Justice Smith, and another character called Dylan. And they both show romantic interest in each other over the course of the narrative. But they are, even though they are definitely gay and interested in each other, they're much more than that too. Like, they're just characters who they're constantly split up throughout the game, and they go on their own stories and they have their own issues. Particularly Justice Smith's story is very compelling. And the name of the other character's actor is blanking on, like, it just is not coming to me right now. But he's the son of Susan Sarandon and Tim Robbins. And even though he says he's straight, he's known for cross-dressing quite a bit and wearing women's dresses. So make of that what you will. So he's technically not queer, but might be. But yeah, The Quarry is a very well-written horror game that plays upon the tropes of the slasher flick and the creature feature genres, with 2 very well-written queer characters who are not just 2-dimensional gay men waiting to be picked off by the creature. So, you know, like, they're not, and the game doesn't doing the horror trope of like, oh, you're being punished for being gay, you're punished for transgressing, and all those other things. Like, it's very well-written. Like I said, where the game kind of falls flat is if you're looking for something with like a lot of like meat to the gameplay, this game is not it. It's a playable movie. You're kind of clicking through the story, making choices. There are lots of different ways to end the game. You could play through the game 2 or 3 times and still not see every possible ending, even though the ending kind of all leads to the same place, because it's like one night you're trying to survive the night until dawn, like the first game. But anyway, it's available for PS5, PS4, Xbox Series, and PC. And I think it's on sale on Steam right now as well as part of the Steam Spring Sale for like 85% off, I want to say. So anyway, go play The Quarry. It's great. And that just about wraps up this week's show. Thanks, True Avatars, for joining me for another episode of your Queer Video Game Podcast. If you've made it this far into the episode, I really appreciate you taking the time to support queer-made content, which is a big deal. If you want to support the show, it would be really great if you could leave a rating, review, or comment on your preferred podcast platform. I welcome you to check out the website, trueavatarspodcast.com, all one word. That's trueavatarspodcast.com. You can also find the show on Blue Sky, Threads, and YouTube under the handle @TrueAvatars, all one word, and on Instagram under TrueAvatars. Importantly, if you or anyone you know is queer and involved with video games in some way, please don't be shy. I would love to hear from more queer voices in video games. Your voice is unique, invalid, and worth sharing with the world. And if you don't want to be on the show or know anyone who's interested, but you know about a cool queer video game or games industry story that's queer related, please let me know. The show's official email is trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. That's trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. You can also feel free to reach out via the website or the aforementioned social media pages. Things are tough out there, and queer people need to stick together when we can. Bye, True Avatars. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to speaking with you all again next week. Take care and stay safe.